بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على أشرف عباد الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه ورضي الله عن الصحابة أجمعين mbokki jullit yëpp mbokki lislaam yi mbokki waa Naylul Maram mi ngi leen di nuyu yéen ñëpp di leen ziyaar tey na ñuy dalal suñ benn rakk bu ñuy wax Yatma Faye di kenn ci ñun ci ñi nga xam ne ñooy mbokki daara ji di kenn ci ñi nga xam ne yàlla moo ñu xamale fii ci dëkk bi di ñi nga xam ne ñoo ëpp activité ci daara ji dëgg la gaa mën nañ ne bu dee wàllu toog jàng defeewu ko fii ci daara ji waaye bu dee li nga xam ne nag mooy doxal liggéey bi ci bépp fànn loolu moom ma nga ca ba yàlla dogal na fan yi bu yàggu rek bind na benn livre bu am solo jëmale ko ci jullit ñëpp livre bi mu ko bindee daf ko bëggoon a def fi sabilillah rek di ko mayee ginnaaw bi nag ci leen gis ne bu dee jaamu yàlla la rek mën na koo awee yeneen yoon fexe ba am sa weccet woowee ñu jël ko dugal ko ci liggéey bi yàlla bi mel na it li ëpp ci ay mbiram it loolu la ko yàlla bëggloo maanaam daal bokk na ci ndaw yi nga xam ne yàlla bëggloo na leen jàkka te yonent bi sallallahu alayhi wasallam moo ne woon ndaw la ngeen gis mu bëgg jàkk na ngeen ko seedeel ak gëm yàlla ku ngeen gis mu bëgg jàkk na ngeen ko seedeel ak gëm yàlla te bokk na ci ñi nga xam ne yàlla moo leen bëgg mooy ndaw lu bëgg jàkk yàllaa ko bëggal boppam kon nag yàlla na la yàlla boole ci ñooñi moom nag comme niñ ko waxee ci lépp loo xam ne liggéeyu daara ji la rakkam ju mbokkal lépp mi ngi fi bokk ci xale yi jàng lépp loo xam ne day doxal liggéey bi mi ngi ci di koo xam ne it yàlla dogal na mu am vision ci àdduna bi am ay xalaat bëgg koo xam ne ku bëgg création la wala ku bëgg li nga xam ne mooy organiser ay yëf yoo xam ne day doxal nit ñi ci la kii kon waxtaanu teyam mi ngi jëm ci li nga xam ne mooy histoire Karbala ñi ngi ñaan suñu borom subhaanahu wa taala yombalal ko te jàppandalal ko te mu nekk loo xam ne danañ si mën a jàngatee te danañ si mën a jariñoo kon jërëjëf sëriñ Yatma.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين ومولانا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, thank you Ustaz Abdul for those words. So inshallah we hope that Allah make it easy for all of us, inshallah. So after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending salutation on Nabi Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I would like to begin by saying assalamu alaikum, because ever since the Ramadan started, so many faces didn't see mine. It's because we were busy working for the masjid and at home as well. So we ask Allah to accept our Ramadan and to forgive all of us. So Ramadan Kareem, everyone, and to open the gate of Jannah, Babul or Rayyan, to all of us, inshallah. to open it and never closed it. Illa yawmiddin. So today my topic is Karbala. And for those who are not familiar with the term, inshallah, I will make sure that you learn something new. Dear brothers and sisters, believe it or not, but the Muslim Ummah was once one Ummah, one nation, under one name, Islam. And it was under one leadership, the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, whom Allah sent as a mercy to mankind, and not only the Arabs, but to every generation that will come. Also, we had only one brotherhood, the Sahaba, or the companions of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, ridwanullahi alayhim. So it was all one, and unfortunately we lost that privilege of being one ummah. We lost all of that the time that the Prophet ﷺ has left this dunya. So Islam came and eradicated much of the ignorance that the Arabs used to have. Like one of my talk not a long time ago, I was talking about how the Prophet was a mercy to the Arabs because how ignorant they were, and how Allah sent Muhammad as a mercy to all of them and to us as well. So what they did with the message, I talk about it, was something that the Prophet didn't want. And of course, so many people, they accepted Islam, not because they believed, of course they didn't have a strong faith. So many hypocrites or people who accepted because they earned some rewards from that were in the people. But they were exposed by Allah as they deserted Islam as soon as they heard that the Prophet ﷺ left the dunya. So many people start showing their real faces. Allah exposed them. And so many people also were not exposed at that time, but later on, during the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anhu, Umar, and them. But for instance, one of the people that Allah exposed right after the Prophet ﷺ passed away was, one of the examples was the fitna of Aswad al-Ansi of Yemen, the people of Musaylama al-Kadhab, and the people of Banu Hanifa, and all of them who claimed to be prophet, right after Abu Bakr took the leadership of the believers. So it was because of their weak iman and their strong loyalty to their own custom of tribalism. So many people, they returned and then they started to worship their idols because they were loyal to them. So many people run away and started their own religion, and most of them who stay, they stay simply because they seek some benefit from the Muslim community. So today I will be reminding you and myself about the incident that took place in Karbala, which might sound a little bit biased because so many people already call me a Shia, but I ask Allah to make it easy on all of us. I'm just saying that I'm a pure Sunni and I believe in all of them. I love all of them. So if you hear anything that might not sound familiar with what you believe, please do not attack or do not, just understand that it is for the sake of educating and nothing else. So I love all of them. Okay, first of all, I want to start by saying the predictions of all the fitna that came after the Prophet. The Prophet ﷺ predicted so many things. That's how we know the things that are going to happen when we're not there yet. Like yesterday, the sisters Abu Bakr, Son Abu Bakr and Son Manfatu were talking about the signs of the Qiyamah, or the last day. We know that from the Prophet ﷺ. So he also taught us like a lot of signs and a lot of prediction about fitna that would come after him. And in a hadith narrated by Abu Musa al-Ashari radiallahu anhu, who said that one day he accompanied the Prophet ﷺ to one of the gardens that was owned by one of the Ansar. So the Ansar were the people that lived in Medina. The Prophet and his people, they migrated from Mecca to Medina to Munawwara, the city of the Prophet. And then the people that came were the Muhajirin, but the people that were there already were the Ansar. So one of the Ansar, he had a garden, and the Prophet used to go and rest over there to avoid people to distract him. So one day Abu Musa al-Ashari followed him, and when the Prophet was sleeping inside, he stood outside to guard the door of the garden, and then the Prophet ﷺ was sleeping inside. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he came and he asked permission to enter, and then Abu Musa al-Ashari said to him that the Prophet is sleeping inside. Do you mind if I go inside and ask him if he can enter? Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. So the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Musa to tell Abu Bakr to enter. He said, tell Abu Bakr to enter and tell him, give him the glad tidings of Jannah. He said, Abu Bakr fil Jannah. And he said, Umar fil Jannah. And he said, Ali fil Jannah. And then he asked him about Usman. And he said, yes, Usman fil Jannah, walakin ba'da balwa. Usman is also amongst the people of Jannah, but after a calamity before him. After a calamity before him. When Usman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu asked the Prophet ﷺ what that supposed to mean, he said to him, Allah will give you a shirt. And that shirt, so many people, hypocrites, people who have weak iman, they will come and they will want to take it away from you. But do not give it to them until Allah take it from you. That's why when the people of Fitna came and asked him to leave the Khilafah to give up the Khilafah, he didn't give it to them because he understood that was the shirt that the Prophet was talking about. So it was all predicted. And that was the beginning of the Fitna. So all of them, they will go to Jannah, but Usman will after the calamity before him. So that is how the fitna started. It all started with okay, he's a Sahabi, of course, because he accepted Islam, but his name was Abdullah ibn Saba from Kufa or Iraq. He came and he started all of that. So that is how that is the origin of like so many battles. Like the first battle, the battle of Jamal or the camel between Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu and Aisha bin Abi Bakr, the beloved wife of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam radiallahu anha. And we call it the battle of Jamal because Aisha was sitting on a camel, because the wives of the Prophet, they were not supposed to be seen outside, so they had a little tent and then they used to sit there. And of course Ali had to fight Aisha in a battle, but it was because the hypocrites made them fight and save time, but it was not because they had any hatred against each other. So we have to make that clear. And the next battle was the battle of Siffin between Ali and Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And all of those was because of the killing of Usman. So the calamity that before Usman led to those fights. And inshallah, why am I mentioning this? Because the battle of Karbala also had something to do with this. If it was not for this type of fitna, then Karbala would never happen or taken place. So that is the prediction of the battle of Jamal and Siffin. And the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam also predicted the battle of Karbala, but I will get to that later, inshallah. But and another hadith which was narrated by Muslim ibn Aqil al-Hasimi. Muslim ibn Aqil was the son of Aqil ibn Abdul Muttalib. Abi Talib, actually, he was the cousin of Hussein ibn Ali. So he said that Aisha and Ali were both sitting in the room with the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And the Prophet asked Ali, Ya Ali, what do you say if I tell you that one day you and Aisha will fight each other? And then Ali, he looked at him and he was scared, and he said, me fighting Aisha, then I would be the most terrible person in the entire dunya. I would never do that. But the Prophet didn't respond to that. He just said, when that happened, رُدْعَ إِلَى مَا مَنِهَا. He said, when that happened, bring her back where she came from safely. That's why I'm not going to go deep into the battle of Jamal and Siffin because it's not the topic today. We're going to skip it because it's a long story. But during the battle of Jamal, when the people tried to attack Aisha al-Haqqa, he cut the legs of the camel, and then Ali sent the best of his women, the women of Qasimi, the best of the women in the family of the Prophet, to take Aisha back to Medina, where she came from, and where she would feel safe, because he remembered the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, or the advice of the Prophet ﷺ. Later on in history, or during the golden age of Islam, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal al-Saybani radiallahu anhu, he was asked by his students, and he delivered the most beloved answer that I actually think that all Sunnis should have. The students, they said, oh yeah, Imam, during the battle between Ali, or the Sahaba, between Ali and Aisha, Muawiyah and all of them, if you were alive during those times, which side would you have taken? So they asked him to take a side. So Imam Ahmad, he looked at them and he says, Allah has saved all of us from splitting the blood of Muslims from our sword. We were not born back then. He has saved all of us from killing Sahaba, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ. Then fear Allah and love yourself and worship Allah and stop talking about them. Why should I drain my mouth and my tongue about a matter that Allah saved me from? And he walked away. And that is the pure Sunni aqidah or like theology, the one that they should have, all of us. So when somebody asks you to pick a side, do not pick a side. Just say that you are a Muslim and you love all of them. Imam Ahmad looked at them and he said, don't you know what Allah says about them? He said, Radiallahu anhum wa radu an. He is pleased with all of them and they are pleased with him. So I have no words against them. Brothers and sisters, despite all the predictions and warning from our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was not even yet over 50 years after his death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Muslim rulership was sliding into corruption under the tyrant Umayyad dynasty. We're not saying this because we hate any of them, but we're just saying what everybody did. And it was led by Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. So people used not to do like the old custom of the Sahaba, Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, and Ali, and them. Now people focus more about things of the dunya more than the akhirah. So after the first fitna or war between the companions of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, the ummah was then divided into sections. Ali and Muawiyah made a deal, and many of the people that were in the army of Ali during the battle of Siffin, they deserted him. They started disobeying him and making him feel the pain of being deserted, being betrayed by your own people. So Ali left from Siffin back to Kufa and Iraq, and so many people, they left his army. And those people that left his army, they started another group that called Al-Hawaris. Then they start another group, and then they didn't comply with the rules of Ali. One day, three of the Hawaris, they sat down to determine the future or the fate of the Muslim Ummah. One of them said that all this fitna is happening because of Ali ibn Abi Talib, so let me go and kill him. And the other one said, no, it's all because of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, let me go and kill him. And the third one said, no, it's all because of Amr ibn al-As, let me go and kill him. So sitting there, they decided what they will do. And in the 17th of Ramadan, in the 40th years after the Hijrah, Al-Burq ibn Abdullah al-Tamimi, he went to Syria Assam to assassinate Muawiyah. So when Muawiyah finished the Fajr prayer, he attacked, but he missed because he jumped. And then he didn't kill him, he just cut him, but he didn't kill him. Then another one whom his name I do not know, he went to kill Amr ibn al-As, but he missed. He killed the wrong man because that day Amr was feeling sick and somebody led the Fajr prayer. And the last one, who I always remember his name, of course, was Abdul Rahman ibn Mujim, who went to Kufa and Iraq, and he waited until Ali ibn Abi Talib left the house to go to the masjid, and he stuck him with a sword, poison sword, in his forehead during the Fajr prayer. He didn't die like right away, but he just asked him, did I do anything against you that deserves this? And he told the people not to kill anyone but him if he died, of course. And if he didn't die, they would just put him to prison because he was all about justice. May Allah be pleased with them all. Once a man asked Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, why are there so many fitna during your time? He said, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were no fitna, no trials, but during the time of Abu Bakr, less fitna, Umar, and all of them. But during your time, it's like fighting against each other, Sahaba fighting each other. Why? Are you that bad? And Ali said to him, because during the time of the Prophet and the great Sahaba, they used to lead people like me. But during my time, I am leading people like you, who have no respect to their leaders. And he walked away. Ali ibn Abi Talib then passed away. So people placed Al-Hassan, his son. He had two sons that were from Fatima, Hassan or Hussein, and the rest from his other wives. Of course, he had daughters too, Zainab al-Kubra from Fatima also, but since like leadership used to go back to the men, that's why I am mentioning the men. So Hassan, whom the Prophet predicted to be a peaceful leader, and he was one the Prophet predicted that he is going to be a very peaceful leader. So Hassan, what he did was he sent a letter to Muawiyah requesting for peace. That's exactly what the Prophet was expecting from him. When Ali ibn Abi Talib was martyred, to prevent dispute and more bloodshedding, Hassan requested that Muawiyah actually, because the whole fight was Ali to Muawiyah was telling Ali that before I pledge allegiance to you, you have to kill the assassinate the people that killed Usman. And Ali said, you have to give me the bayya first, the place of allegiance, you have to give it to me first so I can do it. But that didn't happen. So Muawiyah wanted to be the Khalifa, and Ali thought that he was supposed to be the Khalifa also. Because the people of Fitna, they forced him to be the Khalifa, otherwise they would kill all the Sahaba. So it was all about the Khilafah that they fight each other for. So Hassan, he said, I don't want it, so I will let you have it, Muawiyah. But you have to have a part, you have to sign a part. You will not, after your death, you will not pass the Khilafah to your sons. You cannot make it like an empire. People, Muslims have pride for their Khilafah, so you cannot make your son or your sons the next Khalifa after you. And he said yes. So he and his people, they pledged allegiance to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. He said to him that if he's alive by then, he will be the next Khalifa, him, Hassan ibn Ali. So Muawiyah accepted, and then they signed the pact, and they both have peace. And then for 20 years, peace came back to the Muslim Ummah, no fighting. So Hassan fixed everything by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Muawiyah went back to Assam, to Syria, and Hassan is in Medina. But then after 20 years, Hassan passed away. So it was supposed to be, if Muawiyah passed away, Hassan will be the next Khalifa. But then what happened is Hassan died. Then the problem now began. The people of Assam or Syria, they wanted the next Khalifa to be amongst the Bani Umayyah, the people of Usman or Muawiyah and them. And the truce was then violated, and all began with the martyrdom of Hassan, of course, because so many Sahaba, they believed that he was poisoned by Muawiyah. That is something that I'm not going to go deep. It's just some words that I have no proof of. Not so many people, they said that he was poisoned by Muawiyah himself. So on his deathbed, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, he requested that the next Khalifa would be either Marwan ibn al-Hakam, whom his father, al-Hakam, was so harsh on the Prophet that they sent him away. They told him to get out of Medina. So Muawiyah now is requesting that his son, Marwan, will be the next Khalifa, or his son, Yazid ibn Muawiyah. The same things that Hassan told him not to do, that's what he was doing on his deathbed. So they chose Yazid to be the next Khalifa, and every place accepted him except the great Sahaba that lived in Medina, of course. People like Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr, who was angrier than anybody else, of course. So they all said no. And amongst those people also were Hassan, were Hussein, the brother of Hassan, because Hassan passed away. And who is Hussein? The last grandson of Rasulullah amongst them, alayhi salatu wasalam. So Yazid, he admonished all of them by force. He retrieved the oath of allegiance from all of them using the sword, and of course he had spies all around Medina, Mecca, and everywhere. So he was forcing them to accept the bay'ah, to give him the bay'ah. The virtue of Hussein, just to tell people who Hussein ibn Ali was before I go to the event of Karbala. Al-Hussein radiallahu anhu is the son of Ali and Fatima, the grandson of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Once the Prophet alayhi salatu wa sallam used to see him playing around the Kaaba, he would run and kiss him and carry him above his head, and he would kiss him, saying that this one is most beloved to the people of the heavens and the people of this dunya. He loved him so much because he was his grandson, of course. He would say that this one, Hussein and Al-Hassan, they are the leader of every youth in Jannah. They're gonna be the leader of every youth in Jannah. So they are the people of Jannah. When people used to see them running away, they would say, if you want to see a person of Jannah, just look at these two kids. Salman al-Farisi radiallahu anhu narrated that Allah has favored Ahlul Bayt. Who are Ahlul Bayt? The family of the Prophet, or the household of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Allah has favored them over the people of this dunya. It was to his father Ali that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said in Yawm al-Adir, or the day of Adir, after the birth, he looked at the people and he said, today I'll tell you something. He said, Allah is my master and I am your master. And like what Abdul Qadir Jagrot to say, Man kuntu mawla fa'aliyun mawla. And if I am your master, then know that Ali ibn Abi Talib is also your master. So many people, they call themselves Shia or the party of Ali today. That is one of the things that they put in their mind, that they think that Ali was supposed to be the next Khalifa after the Prophet passed away. So when his father Ali ibn Abi Talib was asked about the household of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, my brother and cousin Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam taught me $1,000 of knowledge, and each of them opens another $1,000 of knowledge, and that is something that only us Ahlul Bayt have and nobody else. So he was praising himself for the honor that Allah gave him. And he continued saying that to us, the family of the Prophet ﷺ are incomparable to any other person of this nation. And if you do not know about Ahlul Bayt, I will tell you about Ahlul Bayt. He said, we are the vitality of knowledge, the demise of ignorance. We do not fear truth, nor do we differ from it. We are the advocates of Islam, the stronghold of Iman. He said, with us, truth has returned to its allocation and so forth has shifted away from its position. We understand religion with a mind of conscience and patronage. We are the authority from the Prophet ﷺ himself and the protectors of his order, the secret of his knowledge and the hope of his wisdom, the caves of his books and the mountain of his religion. So this is the virtue and the legacy of Hussein ibn Ali ibn Fatima bint Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Manaf ibn Qasi ibn Kilab ibn Murata ibn Ka'ab ibn Lu'ay ibn Halib ibn Fah ibn Malik ibn Kinanata ibn Husaymata ibn Mudrika ibn Ilyas ibn Mudar ibn Nizar ibn Ma'ad ibn Adnan, and so on. May Allah be pleased with them all. So Hussein alayhi salam, he witnessed his grandfather, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, struggling. At young age, he saw all of that to establish a moral, just and compassionate society during the time of ignorance, when he was calling people on only one thing, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and he was just a kid. So he saw for Allah despite being young. Even when the Prophet was on his deathbed, he was there also. So right after Muawiyah passed away, his son Yazid ibn Muawiyah sent a letter to the governor of Medina, who happened to be his first cousin as well. His name was Al-Walid ibn Utbah ibn Abi Sufyan. Muawiyah is the son of Abi Sufyan. So Al-Walid was the son of Utbah, and Utbah was also the brother of Muawiyah. So he was his cousin. And the letter said, it read, as soon as you see this letter, summon Hussein and extract the oath of allegiance from him by force. If not, then put him to death. So Hussein, in a famous narration, he replied to that saying, I will never give Yazid my hands like a man who has been humiliated, nor will I feel like his slave. I am only the slave of Allah. He said, I have not risen to spread evil or to show off, because I am amongst Ahl al-Bayt, but I only desire to enjoy good values and forbid evil. It was narrated by Sayyid Ma'adi Mudarrisi that Hussein left Medina to go to Mecca after that, because of course he knew that Yazid was not going to be patient. He was going to come to attack him to Medina. But then when he went to Mecca, he realized that this is the capital of the city of Islam and the home of the Kaaba. Hoping that Yazid would respect that, he stayed for a moment, but then he realized that he was followed by people, him and his family. The spies and the people that Yazid ibn Muawiyah sent were killing some Sahaba who were so close to the Prophet ﷺ, that were loyal to Hussein, so that forced him to leave Mecca, because he didn't want to spill any blood in the sacred city of Mecca. So he said, I will leave. And when he decided to leave, Abdullah ibn Abbas came to him and said to Hussein to stay or to go back to Medina, but Hussein said, no, I will go to Kufa, because Ali ibn Abi Talib has changed the center of the Khilafah from Medina to Munawwara to Kufa to Iraq when he was Amirul Mu'minin. So Ibn Abbas said to him, why are you not staying? And he said, I don't want them to violate the sanctity or the purity of the city of Mecca. If they split my bullet here, then generations that come, they will be hurt from that. So let me just go to Kufa, to Iraq. And Ibn Abbas said to him, oh Hussein, then do know that the same fate is awaiting you on your way, on your route to Kufa. And he said, I know, by Allah I know. And he took his family and he was about to leave, and some other Sahabi like Abdullah ibn Umar came to him, talked to him, and he said, I will go to Kufa because no calamity can befall me except by the permission of Allah. He said, Ma'adhaban min musibati illa bi'idhnillah. So he was endangered by the assassins and spies that were sent by Yazid ibn Muawiyah to Mecca. So during that month, it is said that he couldn't even perform his Hajj. He didn't go to Hajj because he didn't want to get killed while performing the Hajj. And remember, this is the grandson of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. So when we think about the operation that people, just regular people have on this dunya, it's crazy thinking about this is happening to the last of the grandson of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. So Hussein couldn't perform his Hajj, so he decided to go to Iraq, because he received so many letters from the people of Kufa saying that if you come here, we will pledge allegiance to you because your father used to live here. And he said, okay, if the people of Kufa say that maybe it's true, that Abdullah ibn Umar said, but these people, they betray your father. And he said, maybe I'm not my father, maybe they will learn from that to be loyal to me. And he sent his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil, the one that I said narrated the story, the hadith that I said earlier. He sent him to Kufa to see if the people, what they said is true. He said, go to Kufa and see the situation there and report back to me before I go. So he left. Muslim ibn Aqil, he left in the month of Dhul Qadda, and when he reached Kufa, he discovered that there were thousands of people ready to pledge their allegiance to the grandson of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. From 12,000, and he raised up to the number kept on increasing until it was 18,000 people who were ready to fight for Hussein. And he was happy for that, and he was very happy. So he wrote back a letter to Hussein saying, people here support you, so come and your family. And then so they gave him the support. So because Yazid ibn Muawiyah had a lot of spies around, he was aware of that situation, that people were ready to fight for Hussein, and then they pledged their allegiance to him in the hands of Muslim ibn Aqil. So what Yazid did was very smart. He said, I suspected that something is going to happen, so as a precaution measure, he decided to replace the governor of Kufa, who was a great Sahabi of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. His name was Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu, and he replaced him with Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, who was in the army of Ali during the Battle of Siffin. And he was now to be ruthless and harsh on people. He was very cruel, according to the narration. So on one particular day in the month of Zulhijjah, this new governor of Kufa, Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, he went to the street of Kufa, and he knew that Hussein had only at least 70 or 72 followers coming from Medina or Mecca to Kufa. So he took 70 people with him, and he covered himself with his turban, and he acted like, he dressed like he was amongst the people of Ahlul Bayt. And when he was walking on the street of Kufa, people, they made the biggest mistake of their life. They start greeting him, saying Salamun alayka ya Hussein. They thought he was Hussein ibn Ali. So they were greeting him, saying salam, salam, and then he knew that now Hussein is going to come. So he sent a lot of spies to the outskirts of Kufa, and he said, report back to me if you see anybody leaving or anybody entering Iraq. So now he became more aware that Hussein is there or is going to come, and he did that. He then discovered that Muslim ibn Aqil was in the quarter of Al-Asadi. The people of Al-Asad, they were so loyal to Hussein. And one of them, people who were so loyal to Hussein and Muslim ibn Aqil, was Hani ibn Urwa. So they saved the people, and then they protected them from Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. So what Ibn Ziyad did, he sent a huge number of people with weapons to go to bring Muslim ibn Aqil by force to the house of, to search him in the house of Hani ibn Urwa. So what they did is they circled the house, and then they forced everybody, and then they searched the house until they found everybody who was there. They didn't find Muslim ibn Aqil there, but they found Ani ibn Urwa and his people, so they took them to jail. They put them in prison. So when Muslim ibn Aqil realized that Hani ibn Urwa was taken away, he put his people into test. He said, okay, either Yazid ibn Muawiyah is very smart, or his governor Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is very, very clever, or we have spies amongst us. So he was testing them. He called out to people and he said, are you ready to go with me, to march with me, to protest with me to the place of the governor and to demand for the release of the people that are taken away? They said, by Allah, we will support you. But only 4,000 people supported him. So they said they were ready to go with him. And some spies, they went to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and they told him that. So what he did, he sent letters to every home, and he said to the parents to persuade their sons not to go with Muslim ibn Aqil. And then the parents would say things like, do not go, he already have enough people, and if you are killed, who's going to take care of me? So they put fear in their kids, so they stay back. And according to the narration, by the afternoon it was around 400 people who remained behind Muslim ibn Aqil, but by the Maghrib time it was only 30 people, they said. Everybody deserted him. And by the time of Isha, he led 10 people in Salah. And by the time the Salah was done, he turned around and he saw nobody but himself wandering on the street of Kufa. And he was all alone. So right away, he knew that this was going to be really bad. So he wrote back a letter to Hussein saying, do not come. These people, they lied to you and me. They deserted. They betray you. If you come, they will kill you. And he was walking around the street, being the cousin of the Prophet, being the grandson, of course, of the Prophet, because he was the cousin of Hussein. He was walking around home by home, knocking, and he would just say, I am thirsty, do you have any water? And one old woman opened the door, and he recognized that this is somebody from Ahlul Bayt just because of the way he was dressing. And he asked him his name, and he said his name, and he said, Alhamdulillah, Allah has honored me to have somebody from the household of Rasulullah ﷺ that enter in my house. And the woman gave him food and everything, and he told him not to leave the house. But she was very happy. Said, I have somebody from the household of Rasulullah. I can't wait for my son to come home so I can give him the good news. And the son came during the night time, and the woman didn't even sleep. She was waiting for her son to tell him, to inform him about the guests that she had in the house. But the son had only something in mind, one thing. I can't wait until tomorrow to go to the place of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and tell him where Muslim ibn Aqil is, so that I can earn a big paycheck from that. And he did just that. All of a sudden, they just wake up and they saw a large number of armies surrounding the house of that woman, and then they took away Muslim ibn Aqil. They took him away. And on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, Ibn Ziyad, he executed both of them, Ali ibn Urwa and Muslim ibn Aqil. He cut their heads off, and he put it on a spear, and he put it on the street of Kufa, so people could see how he would do to the people who betrayed Yazid ibn Muawiyah. They did that to the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So back in Medina, Hussein had no idea what's going on in Kufa. Of course, he wrote a letter back to him telling him not to come, but he didn't get the letter because he was killed on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, and Hussein left Medina to Kufa on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, so he didn't get the letter. He, his family, and 72 loyal companions they had their horses and then they were coming to Kufa, not knowing that they were just going to a massacre or like to get killed. So Yazid predicted that he knew everything that was going to happen because of his spies. He knew that this is going to happen, Hussein is coming. So he sent a big army and he said to block him in the way so that he would never enter Kufa. Because if he entered Kufa, people could actually change their mind. Because this is the grandson of Rasulullah. Seeing him and hearing what he has to say, they would desert Yazid. So he sent the big army to block him from reaching Kufa, and they forced them to the desert or a land known as Karbala. And that is the name of the topic today. So on his way to Kufa, someone screamed in the army of, or the family of Hussein, because he had 72 people, only 72, and he's included. A lot of women were included in that 72, and a lot of children, of course, a bunch of children. So those 72, you can say 10 or less than that men. And they are facing a very big, large army, but they didn't know. Somebody just screamed and he said, Allahu Akbar. And then Hussein said, what is that? What happened? And he said, I saw the palm trees of Kufa, now we are here. And somebody else said, no, subhanallah, knowing the route to Kufa, I've been there so many times, we're not there yet. And then all of a sudden they realized that what they saw was a very big army coming to them. And then they were trapped in that land called Karbala. So once they reached that land, Hussein with his family of 72 companions, they were surrounded by Yazid's force of up to thousands men led by Hur ibn Yazid, his son. And Hussein got there first, so he was willing to share the water on the Euphrates. But the army was big, so they took over, and then they said to not let them to have any water. And that was against the rule of war. So now he realized that Muslim ibn Aqil and Ali ibn Urwa died a long time ago, and there are no people there to back him up. So Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Fatima bint Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was there helpless, and he only had 3 wishes. He said, Ya Hur, allow me and my family to return to Medina peacefully. And he said, I refuse, you will not go back to Medina. And he said, Ya Hur, allow me to rest here, and tomorrow I myself will go to Yazid and claim my petition and talk to him in peace. He said, no, you're not leaving here. He said, then what do you want? And then he said, either you give me the oath of allegiance, either you pledge your allegiance to Yazid right now, or we will put you to death. He said, then we are willing to fight fisabilillah and to die on the way of Allah. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So Hur, he came closer to him, but he stood a distance away from him, because nobody would dare to get closer to the son of Ali, because how dare they were when they have their sword. And he looked at Hussein and he said, Ya Abba Abdullah, because his kunya or his nickname was Abba Abdullah, do not let Allah to test me with the family of Rasulullah. Please just do what we want you to do and go peacefully. Hussein said, by Allah, I will never give my allegiance to Yazid. So you're going to have to put me to death, me and my family. And he said, Ya Hur, may Allah curse you, and may your mother be deprived of you. May your mother would never give birth to you. And then Hur was angry and he said, Wallahi, if it was somebody else who said that, then I would take revenge against him. But what can I say about your mom? What can I say about your mother? What can I say about Fatima bint Rasulullah when she is Sayyidatul Nisa'i lil Alamin? What can I say about your mom when she's the leader of all the women in Jannah and in the world? So after this incident was reported, they knew that Hur had some soft spot for Ahlul Bayt, and they reported back to Ibn Ziyad, and Ibn Ziyad replaced the commander. He replaced Hur, and he replaced him with somebody who was tough and ruthless and cruel. His name was Omar ibn Sa'd. He promised him land. He said to him, if you do the work, if you have the work done, I'll give you lands and everything. Promised him gold, everything. So there you have people who will do the dirty work and injustice for the price of this temporary dunya over the one of the eternal Jannah. Subhanallah. Hussein and his family and companions, they were forced to take a path at the banks of the Euphrates. And at some point on the way, his steed or his horse stopped, and Hussein jumped off the horse and he said, by Allah, this is the place. This is where I and my family will be killed. This is where we will be buried, and this is where we will descend. And this is where people will remember us forever and our legacy, this place. So he said, he turned around and he saw one of his companions, Zuhair radiallahu anhu, and he asked him, what is the name of this land? And he said, this land is known as Taf. And he said, I am not familiar with that name. Anything else? And he said, it is also known as Nainawa. It's like a name of a bird because a lot of birds used to go over there. And then for the last time he asked, is there another name for this place? And he said, this place is also known as Karb and Bala, which means tribulation and sorrows. Then Hussein jumped and he said, wallahi, this is where I am gonna die, and all of you. And this is where my woman and my family were taken as prisoners. And this is where history will remember us forever. So despite being largely outnumbered with limited access of water, he remembered the heat of the desert, of course. The children were deprived of tasting water, yet Hussein, he refused to give up. Umar ibn Sa'd, he gave Hussein a final choice, and he said to either give up and give him the pledge of allegiance, or to be killed with his entire family. After receiving the final ultimatum, or the final say order, Hussein realized now that this is no longer a joke but a reality, and that he would be killed in a matter of days, if not the next day. So during the night, he gathered his companions on the night of Asura. That's why on this day, every day on the 13th of October, or like the 10th of Muharram, people celebrate this day. Of course, we used to celebrate it because it was the day that Musa was granted victory against the people of Fir'aun. But the Shia, they celebrate this day, they commemorate it, they beat themselves up, all of that, because Hussein was killed on the next day. But this is the night of Asura, and he gathered his people, his companion, and he explained the situation. He said, Yazid do not need you, he needs me. So use the night as cover and flee away. He said, I have forgiven you. You have not betrayed me. You can go and save yourself and your family. It's okay, I can go and he can take me to prisoner or whatever. So they said to him, no, we will not do that. And again, Hussein's selflessness is sound through that he was willing to sacrifice himself for those people to go back. So they refused to leave him. They refused to leave his side even in the face of death. That's how loyal they were. That's why they call him the loyal Sahabi. So Hussein go back to the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil, and he said, your father did his part. I am not forcing you to go with me. Run away during the night. And they said, Wallahi, we will not. Why? What would we say to Allah on the day of the judgment? That we run away because we love this dunya? We will never do that. We will fight alongside you until death do us apart. And Hussein raised his hand and he said, Ya Allah, look at them. And he smiled and he said, no prophet or wali were given companions as loyal as mine. Then the morning of Ashura then came, the 13th of October, 680 AD, or the 10th of Muharram, 61 after the Hijrah. Hussein, he kept on telling his people to turn away from him, but they refused to leave him, so they remained loyal to the end. He was giving the opposite side a very beautiful speech about the virtue of Ahlul Bayt, like his family. He was telling them about who he was, about what the Prophet said about him. And so many people were listening. And listening to that, you remember Hur Ibn Yazid, he felt bad, so he switched aside with his son and he came and he sided with Hussein. So now they are 74. They were 72, but now they are 74. And actually, those 74, you can take away the women. By the time that they were lining up to fight against 30,000 people, it was only like 15 or less than that people. And amongst them were the children of Rasulullah ﷺ. For what? Power, leadership. Despite this, Hussein and his men, they stay loyal to him, and they stay true to their principles. And when the dust settled, Hussein and his companions, they fought and they were killed one after another. So they said that what was his name again? They said that Umar ibn Sa'd, he aimed at them and he fired the first arrow, and then that's how the fight began. And then they fought, and then they killed all of them until the children of Hasimi, or the Bani Hasim, the family of the Prophet, left. And it was in their like tradition of war. It was a tradition of war to them that when the family of the Prophet fight, they fight one by one. They don't fight like that. When they kill everybody except the family of the Prophet, they have to fight in one-on-one combat. Like they don't fight like in groups. It was only few of them, like 5, 6, against 30,000 people. So Hussein, he said to his son, you are the first who will go, Ali Akbar. And Ali Akbar was only 19 years old. So imagine the rest, they were young, 16, 17, 13. He was only 19 years old. So he gave his farewell, his goodbye to his aunt, his sisters, and he went ahead to the battlefield. Hamid ibn Muslim ibn Hakim, he said that as soon as Ali Akbar took out his sword, I saw Hussein raising his both hands to the sky, saying, "O Allah, I send to them a youth that must resemble your Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, in his speech, his mannerism, and his future. He was so beautiful, handsome, and when he speak, you could tell that this is a grandson of Rasulullah. They speak the same, no different, sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So Ali Akbar came to the battlefield and he screamed, "O people, I am Akbar, the son of Hussein." He said, "Come fight me and you will see how this child of Hasimi will defend his honor." Being a child fighting one-on-one against 30,000 men, just realize that. And he killed so many of them, like his grandfather Ali used to fight with the kuffar. Akbar was tired and he returned back to his father, to the tent. So he fought so many people and he killed all of them, being a 19-year-old. He came back and he said, "Oh father, I can no longer fight, I am thirsty." For 3 days they didn't drink any water because they deprived them from drinking water. And that was against the rule of war. He said, "I cannot fight anymore. If the enemy do not kill me, the thirst of water will kill me." So Hussein told him to be patient. He said, "Walal ahiratu khairul laka min al-ula." go and fight again. Ya Akbar. Akbar then returned to the battlefield, and the enemies, they broke the rule of the fight. Instead of fighting him one by one, because he would kill them all, they attacked him, all of them. They surrounded him with everything that they had. And one of them, his name is Mura bin Muqayyid, he ran toward Akbar from his back, and he struck him with his spear. And the spear went through his stomach from the back, and it cut him in half. So he fell from the horse, he fell down, and people, they came to him, surrounding him, and they were kicking him, and then they cut him into pieces. And then while they were cutting him, they were saying Allahu Akbar, and he's on the ground, and he's not yet dead. He's saying, Ya Abba, Salamun Alayk, O Father, peace be upon you. Hussein, seeing this, he couldn't stop himself. He ran to the battlefield, and when they saw him coming, they ran away. They ran away, all of them. So he hugged his son, and he kissed him, and he bade him far away. And he looked at his son, and he said, how insolent these people are, killing the family members of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. The cousins of the Prophet, one by one, died. And then now it came to the son of Hassan, Qasim ibn Hassan, who was also a beautiful young boy, maybe 16, 15. He was younger than, if he was younger than Akbar, then he was very young. And he also fought one by one until they attacked him, surrounded him, and his sandal, he was wearing a sandal because his feet, he didn't want his feet to touch the sand, and they said that his sandal was cut by a sword, and he kneeled down to fix it, and somebody came from the back and put a sword in his head, and also they cut him in pieces. But before he died, he was screaming, Ya Amma. He was calling his uncle, Ya Amma. He was calling Hussein, and Hussein went to him also, hugging him, saying, Ya Bunay, oh my son, today your uncle is not in a situation or in a position to save you, but after today you will no longer need his service, and you will no longer need somebody to defend you. So then Habib ibn Mudahir al-Asadi, one of the Asad people, he fought also. He looked at them and he said, you are a large number and we are a small number, but we will not go back. We will fight you to the end. And he fought until he died. And all of them died one by one. Now the men in the family of the Prophet ﷺ were all killed except 3 people. Hussein himself, his half-brother Abbas ibn Ali, whom Ali ibn Abi Talib used to give the flag to carry during the battle of Siffin and all battles, because he was a warrior, very skillful. And of course the last one was Ali ibn Hussein Zayn al-Abidin, who was known as Imam al-Sajjad, because he used to be in sujood, like during the day, the 24 hours of the day, he used to be in sujood most of the time, praising Allah. And he was sick, that's why he couldn't participate in the jihad. So Abbas ibn Ali, he looked at the people and the children crying, and he said, Ya Hussein, I can no longer stand here looking at them crying. I will go to the Euphrates and I will bring water. And Hussein hugged him and kissed him in the forehead, knowing that Abbas will not come back. So Abbas went to the Euphrates, but they were scared of him because he was a warrior. He was like his father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. He got water, and when he came out, he realized that they surrounded him behind the trees everywhere, and they attacked him, and he fought them very, 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 people say for hours and hours they couldn't kill him, and he killed so many of them. And then they aimed an arrow in his back, and he kneeled down. They cut his hand, and he said, by Allah, if you cut my right hand, I will switch with my left hand and I will fight you until I die. They cut his left hand also, so he just lay down there saying, Oh Hussein, do not fear the kuffar, put your trust and confidence in the Jabbar. And when Hussein saw that, he ran to him, and Hussein's daughter Sakina, he was asking, where is my uncle Abbas? Where is him? We are thirsty. Tell him to bring the water. But the water, they put an arrow in the water. There was no water. And Abbas, he promised them to bring them water. So he said, I'd rather die in the battlefield, but I will not go with my barren hand without water. So they killed him over there. And then the enemies, they were over there laughing at him. They making fun of him, calling him name. So Hussein ibn Ali, the grandson of Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam, remained alone in that battlefield because his other son, Zayd ibn al-Abidin, he couldn't fight because he was sick. So Hussein, he had nothing to do. He no longer could bear the pain of seeing like his family being killed, and he had a 6 months old infant, Ali Asqar or Abdullah, just a kid who was just born 6 months old, and he was crying a lot. So he carried him. You know, the family of the Prophet, they don't expose their people, they don't show their face or anything, but he had to do it. He took his son in his hands and he carried him with one hand, and he came out and he jumped on the steed on the horse, and he came to the battlefield and he looked at them and he said, oh people, look at this child, he's just a kid, what crime has he committed against you? And he carried him like this, like the way I'm carrying my phone, and he said, look at him, if you do not trust me, if you think that I will drink your water, calm yourself, and put a taste of water in his lips. And while he was doing that, Umar ibn Sa'd, he looked at Humuza and one of the people, his name is Hurmala, Hurmala, and he looked at him, and that was the order, and he took out he took out the sword, he aimed at him with the child, he aimed at him and he cut him in pieces, 6 months old infant. And Hussein didn't see even, the only thing he saw was blood and flesh coming from his head and his face. Now he lost his senses. He couldn't think any further. He just lay down there saying, Allahumma sabirna ala qadar. 3 times he said, oh Allah, give us sabr upon your decree. And he couldn't do anything because he knew that if these people can do this to that 6 month old infant, then he is not going to be tolerated, he will be killed. And he was the only one left now. He now took his horse and he sacrificed himself for alone fighting. And I keep saying 30,000 people, but it's more because the more that their people die, the more that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad send more people to come to fight. So Hussein is alone and he's attacking the enemy and he's fighting them he's fighting them in group. He was not even following the rule of war anymore, because when he saw his Ali Asqar and he was cut in pieces, just a 6-year-old and 6-month-old infant, he couldn't do anything but to fight them. For 3 days he didn't taste water, remember that. And Hussein, he took a stand that will change the course of his story, because he thought people a lot holding tightly to the torch of justice for generations to come, and this was the situation in which he was in. So they say that even the one that were fighting him, the people that called themselves Muslim, they said that even though he was fighting them, but he was moving his lips praising Allah all the time, saying Alhamdulillah, saying words like praising Allah. Oh Allah, I thank you for being himself, for being in the household of Rasulullah, thanking Allah, fighting, and thanking Allah, fighting. So they made him look like blood. You know, they used to dress white, green turban and all of that, but people said they couldn't recognize his clothes because of blood. And this is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they said that they never saw a man who was in such a situation, being deprived, helpless, hungry, thirsty, wounded, and lost everything, and still his face his face was bright, like there was only one moon in the sky. So the enemies, they said, we are fighting him, but some of us are crying. The enemies, they closed into him and he was about to go and sajda to thank Allah, and Simr, he grabbed his hair from the back and cut off his head. He cut off the head of Hussein ibn Ali, and then later on they said in his story they let their children to play soccer with the head of the grandson of Rasulullah. And why there they remember that this is the head that the Prophet loved the most, the head that he used to kiss. They said that Ali ibn Abi Talib once came and entered in the room of Rasulullah ﷺ, and he was crying, weeping loudly, and he asked him, Ya Rasulullah, is something happened? And he said, Hussein. He said, Jibreel just came and tell me that Hussein will be killed in a land deprived from water, being helpless. And they said they remember that this is what the Prophet ﷺ was saying. And he was a young man who, upon his birth, the Prophet himself made the aqiqah. He made the sacrifice for him. He called the adhan in his ears and gave him his name. He was named by the Prophet himself ﷺ. He did the tahniq and put his blessed saliva in his mouth. And then the order was given, and the order was what? Now everybody died. Set fire on the tent of Hussein. Put fire in it, so the women, they're going to run out. And then when they run out, take them as slaves. So the woman didn't even have time to put their hijab, their veil on them. Some of them, they run out like that, hair like that, exposed. And they are the women of the family of Rasulullah ﷺ. Sakina bin Hussein, he couldn't leave the remaining body of his father. Of course, they cut his head, but he recognized that this is the body of my father. So he just hugged him there. She just hugged him, and then she was crying. But then Shimr also came, and then he took out his sword and he was beating her. And she was, they said, 7, 8 years old, beating her up. A woman or a girl, young girl. So they ran away, all of them. And these people couldn't even bury the body of Hussein, so they left them there, cutting their heads off. And the spears that they used to fight, they used their heads and they put it in the spears, and then they carry them, walking from Kufa, from that land, Karbala, to Kufa, to the place of Yazid, to present that as proof that they killed the people. So they had 74 heads. Astaghfirullah, they have like 15, 16 heads of the men that fought. And then they carried the woman, and then amongst them were only one man. And if you see in Senegal, we have people that they say came from the family of the Prophet. If it was not from that man, then we don't have Sharif or people that came from the family of the Prophet, because there was only one man alive, and that man was Ali Zain al-Abidin, because he was sick. But when Umar ibn Sa'd saw him, he said to him, aren't you a man? Why are you here? Everybody died and you're here. I'm going to kill you. And he took out his sword. So Zainab al-Kubra, Zainab bint Ali, she ran between them, and she said, you're going to have to kill me. Can't you even spare one man? You kill all of them. Just leave him alone. And then the man, they said, if you kill him, then history will remember you as an evil person. Don't do it. They think that they saved him, but I think that Allah saved him, so that we have people that came from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Sajjad, once a man asked him, what's the punishment? Once they asked him, what was the hardest moment of your life? Is it Karbala? He said, no. Karbala, people, they knew what they were fighting for and they died for it. And I would do the same if I was not sick. But the worst is after Karbala, being the only man alive from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seeing the woman and my family being taken away as slaves, raped, and all of that, and I couldn't do anything about it. And he said the route from Karbala to Kufa was the longest, and it will definitely be longer than the Shirat, when you're jumping Shirat. So to conclude, inshallah, the Battle of Karbala galvanized the development of the pro-Allah, the Shia, into a unique religion sect with its own ritual and collective memories. It has a central place in the Shia's history. So now, because of this, they increase their belief in calling themselves Shia, or the party of Ali, and they hate anybody else who is not with them. It has us with them. So, and for them, Hussein's suffering and death become a symbol of sacrifice and the struggle for right against wrong, and for justice and truth against injustice and falsehood. It also provides the members of their faith with a catalogue of heroic norms. The battle is on the day of Ashura, every day on the day of Ashura, every 10th of Muharram. So they came out, and then they have to celebrate that, to make themselves suffer. They cut their chests, they beat themselves up because of this. So they mourn publicly. But for us Sunni Muslims, likewise, we regard the incident as a historical tragedy. Hussein and his companions are widely regarded as martyr or Shahid by both Sunnis and Shia, of course, but to us, we should be Muslims, and we should not even have this title, Shia and Sunnis. I don't think we should have this. But we are supposed to follow the Sunnah of Rasulullah. We shouldn't be Sunnis, but we should be Muslim who follow the Sunnah of Rasulullah. So yeah, I will end by saying that we should be simply Muslim, and that's it, and forget about what happened over there, because we can take lessons from that. Because we think that, okay, that happened, but it is still happening. Muslims are killing each other still. We take the Shahada and we kill each other until present days. If you go, Muslim countries are making Muslim countries suffer. Muslims are running away from Muslim countries to come to America to find shelters here, because they are not comfortable and they are not safe in their countries. So instead of, and most of them are Shia countries, Iran, countries like in the Middle East, and we hate each other because of the incident that took place in Karbala, but we make history repeat itself. So anyone being oppressed will not last forever, for a day. That's what I learned from Karbala. It will not last, because Allah will take revenge for those people, and they will have victory, inshallah. And for those who oppress people, it is never too late to apologize to them and to return to Allah. Allah will forgive all sin except shirk. So do not be like that Fir'aun, who didn't recognize the mercy of Allah and was ignorant until his death, because this happens on the day of Ashura. That's why I'm mentioning that. So sometimes we need to remedy and learn from history, because such incidents are not to separate and divide the Muslim Ummah, but to be careful, because as long as we live, Shaitan is Hannas. He never give up. He will bring hypocrites within us to hate and kill each other. اللهم سبلنا عنا الموت بلا إله إلا الله اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. Any question?